You are now on live stream.
Okay, being at 6:30, we'll call the facilities meeting to order. Let the record show that all facility members are present. Are all Fair Board members present, Deb?
Yes, I believe they're all here now.
Okay. Okay, so the roll call being taken, we will, items being placed at the request of the chair. It's the 2020 Dunn County Fair. Consideration of action by the Fair Board regarding the 2020 Dunn County Fair. So the Facilities Committee would like to listen to what the Fair Board, what you feel your action should be. I did listen in on your last meeting that you had and stuff. And so I guess I'd kind of like to be updated as to what the thoughts and is of the Fair Board. And then that way the Facilities Committee can make a recommendation or whatever. So, so Deb, I guess I'll turn it over to you if you would like to speak at this time.
You bet. Thank you. And I know we have a couple new members to the Facilities Committee. So for some of you, this might be a repeat, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of what's been going on in the fair industry. I was elected in January, president of the Wisconsin Association of Fairs, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I'd be dealing with a situation like this statewide, in addition to just our county. We've been, the executive secretary and the WAF board have been working diligently since early March, creating plans to help fairs figure out, can they have a fair? Are they going to open? What type of fair is it going to be? We are holding weekly board meetings, and we are holding weekly calls amongst all the 75 fairs. We have a max of 100 people that can be on those calls, and we've got the most of 98 people. So they've been real successful and a lot of sharing of great ideas, so forth. We also use the IAFE, which is our International Association of Fairs and Expositions, for assistance and resources to help with any type of decisioning and any type of checklists or items that we want to try to use to pull through. Jamie and I also worked with our legislature, our lobbyists. The legislative regs that we follow currently had a rule in them that if we do not hold a fair in a calendar year, you are no longer eligible for state aid for forever. You can't get back onto that state aid rotation. With that being said, we worked with our lobbyists to get added onto that emergency legislation that was passed in, I don't remember the exact date, but earlier in April, I think it was, that they would disregard that rule this year. So if a fair is not held, we will still be able to get state aid the following year, which is a win for the fair industry because there are fairs that are canceling. I guess, does anybody have any questions about any of the little bit of information before I get too bogged down? Also, the chat, you can send me a question that way too if you want.
Deb, I'm sorry, could you ask people to mute again? There's some people unmuted and the background noise is making it a little bit hard for me to hear you. So okay. If everybody could go look for the little microphone, and then if you hit it, it should mute you. Okay. There should be a symbol at the bottom or right on your screen.
Scott, could you, Scott there, and then I guess it's just Chuck and I at Ron. Ron, if you could mute yourself, that'd be great.
And for okay, the two great. That are on the phone, if they have a question, they can raise their hand pushing *9.
Yep. And to unmute yourself on the phone, you do *6. So if you do want to speak. Okay, I did invite Troy Steinmeier to be on the call, and I don't know if he's joined us yet. Oh, yep, he has. He is chairman of the Meat Animal Committee, and the reason why I invited him to participate in is because our Meat Animal Committee and our meat project or meat sale and so forth is chartered through the 4-H area, not the fair. So it's an integral part of the fair, very important, but it's chartered through 4-H and not the fair, their organization. So I wanted to just let you know that he is also on the call to provide some information as far as animal projects and the meat animal sale. At the present time, we had set that we were going to make a decision on whether or not to hold the fair by July 1st. That would give us like 20 days or 3 weeks to cancel completely. I'm hoping that we can still hold to that deadline. There's a lot of moving pieces. We don't know what the lawsuit is that's in the Supreme Court right now. We don't know what the fallout from that is going to be. We don't know how the county is going to continue with cases and people that are testing positive and where that whole hotspot is. That being said, we probably won't have a fair the same as other years. There's a lot of moving pieces in a fair, as you all know, a lot of entertainment, a lot of people clustered together in one space. So it could possibly be an fair that just caters to the youth and allow them to still exhibit their projects. And that would continue our mission, which is to provide an educational venue for the youth and to help the youth and adults in Dunn County. At this point, we haven't really discussed open class, but I'm thinking with the number of senior citizens that we usually have exhibiting, we might take a break from having opening class this year. We'll have to see how that all shakes out. We've taken steps to reduce our expenses already. We have not printed a fair book. We have not paid for any advertising or anything like that. We have contracts in place that can be canceled if necessary, but we are really watching our spending and making sure that we're not doing excess spending that we're not going to have a return for. At this point, I think I will, just so you can hear somebody different, is let Derek and Troy talk about a jackpot show type premise. They are working on trying to put something together. They have also been in contact with our meat plants, and I'll let them take it away and talk about the animal portion of it if they're available. They can unmute themselves. Again, it's *6.
Can you hear me, Deb?
Yep, I can.
Okay, well, this is
Do you want to
Troy.
introduce yourself? So, yep, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Troy Steinmeier, chairperson for the meat animal for Dunn County. I guess my main message, I'll let Derek talk a lot about the jackpot style show. I did talk a lot with the meat lockers, Silers, Duran Smokehouse, Springbrook, and Kessler's, and we are one lucky county that where our meat lockers are holding out for the fair to make sure that we take care of the youth, that these kids raise their animals, because a lot of meat lockers today are out to December, January, February before you could get your animals processed. And I was able, and it wasn't very hard for Derek and I to get them to hold, but because they saved the spots for our kids. So I think that's a statement right there for what this fair means to the community and to these kids, that you have businesses that are turning away because they could be butchering hogs from Iowa 24/7 if they wanted to, and beef. And they're telling people, no, they're sorry, we're full. We got to take care of these kids' fair projects, for that week. So we do have that taken care of on our end, that there is a home for these kids' projects to go at the end. Auction wise, no idea. That's not for this meeting, type deal, I guess. But I do want to say that, the meat lockers are prepared and, and ready for the projects on the animal side.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Derek, are you available?
Can you hear me?
Yep, you can.
Okay, so with the jackpot style show, how it works is that you bring your project in, no matter if it would be a woodworking project, and no matter it would be a cow, rabbit, what have you, they would come in and they would exhibit that project just one day. So they bring it in the morning, it'd leave that night, be judged during the day. As far as the woodworking projects, the cake, foods, that kind of stuff, that stuff's always, in my mind, it's always been judged without the kids there. Am I wrong? And so therefore that part is pretty easy to do. As far as the meat animal and the dairy projects and that kind of stuff, where it requires a little bit more, where there's more people present. But in all honesty, a lot of these people set up outside and rarely come in the barn, and you have the space in the barn just to have the project, as far as to show it off, the judge, that kind of thing. And therefore your judge and everything, I guess would be them and the kids in there. And then, who knows what there's going to be. I mean, we're about 80 days away from the fair. We don't know what they're going to decide by then as far as how many people you can allow. Maybe there won't be a limit. We don't know. But as far as the jackpot style, it actually takes away most of your people in a group setting all at once. So
and Derek, when we look to count on like animals, like species wise, there's maybe swine would be the only one that would have more than, I don't even think they have 50 exhibitors, but at max would be 50 exhibitors with the swine. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, the swine project would be the biggest project, but there again, a lot of them will be working off the trailer, and especially with swine. I go to a lot of the jackpot shows. That's kind of how we live our summers, and there's just trailers everywhere, and the ring is in the barn, and a lot of these people don't even congregate to the ring. They'll just wait till the end. And therefore you can kind of limit the amount of people. If you have one door in and one door out, like most of these places do, you can dictate how many people come in and out.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Derek or Troy? Okay. If not,
Hey,
somebody's
Deb?
trying to speak?
Deb?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Chuck.
Yes.
I do have a question. As far as limiting the people in and out of the barn, like they were just talking about. So would you actually put a limit based upon the square foot of the building, like it could handle, whatever the number is, and then actually have people at the door counting, kind of like what the stores are doing now. They count how many go in and how many go out. Is that the thought process, or is it kind of?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
If it comes to that and we're still at those limits where we can't have masses of people, that's the way it would operate. And while they're inside, we'll ask them to please spread out and kind of police that. It'll take some volunteers to do that. And I think especially the 4-H and the FFA kids, this is so important to them that I don't think they would jeopardize trying to congregate, because they really want this to happen. They still want the fair to happen. They're asking for it to somehow happen and not be canceled completely. The other part that, Derek did mention the other exhibits, because we don't want to just focus on animals, because the kids that do working in photography and stuff, they spend just as much time and they're just as passionate about their own projects. So DADCAP is sending out a survey to all registered judges in the state of Wisconsin to find out how many of them are willing to come out to the fairs this summer. How many are saying absolutely not, they're not going to do it. If any of them are willing to do it virtually, if any of them, however they can handle it. I haven't seen the full survey. It'll be released at the call tomorrow night that we have with the state. And where that's, to see if anybody else has any questions that they want to add to the survey before it goes out to judges, so that we could do that. There's other ways that we can, we can keep the kids apart. We could use the commercial building if we don't have a normal fair, and that is huge. The ice arena, that we can spread that out to a lot of stations and make sure we're not congregating in areas. And it would be like one-on-one with judges for those projects that need that type of thing. If it's projects that are judged the normal way, where the person doesn't have to be at the exhibit, then those judges would just work with themselves with probably the superintendent volunteer to cover that piece of it. I lost my train of thought. I'm gonna find it on my notes here. As far as the other facets of the fair, I've been in contact with the carnival. All of their spring shows, obviously, in the southern part of the country have been canceled, so they are in Wisconsin. They're working on their plans of how they will operate. We're very fortunate that our carnival does not have any HB2 workers. Any carnivals that had HB2 workers, they were all sent home when this all started, and they're not being allowed back into the country. So there's a lot of carnivals out there that are really struggling to even know if they can open, because they might not have enough workers to help. Our carnival hires they're all pretty much Wisconsin residents. There's a few from Minnesota that come in and work for them. Right now, they're putting plans together about if they can come to the fair, having the proper sanitation. We'll probably have to spread them out further depending on where we put the rides. If we don't have a grandstand, of course, we're going to have, and no parking, we'll have a lot more room that we can really spread those rides out if they are allowed to still continue. I'm worried about the NTPA. The NTPA did issue a notice to everybody that they did reduce the rate 20% right off the top of the contract for any grand national and regional national classes. That means that the participants they get a 20% cut in what their entry fee is, and then the payout that we pay, or the purse part that's part of our contract, it would be cut 20% along with the general fees for the whole. My biggest concern with the NTPA is that fills that and plus carryover. And when you're putting people in a grandstand shoulder to shoulder, even if you give them face masks, and even if it's released a little bit, there's two issues there. Will they keep the face masks on? Will they practice social distancing? And will we have people that are willing to take the chance and come just because of what's going on in the world? And to be honest, it's a huge expense. And do we take the money and spend it and have that show and get nobody in the stand? So that's the big piece of it. The other two nights are racing and the demo derby. Racing, of course, is sitting idle right now. Mark and I have spoken a little bit. They were hoping to open middle of May, but obviously they're not, for the same reasons, because they can't put the people in the grandstand to pay for their show. So it might be a fair just for animals. Can we have the 4-H eat stand? I don't know, to allow the 4-H clubs to make some money. I guess that would come into play with 4-H. They can limit how many people are in that section of the building and serve some food. I did hear from one eat stand that contacted me that was concerned about whether or not we were going to have the fair, and they're trying to decide if they're even going to go out this summer. The petting zoo is probably a no-show. All of his events have been canceled, and his insurance is very, very expensive, and a petting zoo is already notorious for, making sure that it's kept clean and the kids wash their hands. And so I think that will not be there at this point, because I don't think he can afford the insurance, and I don't think that the fair will pay that premium for him, just because I don't know if we get people here to even enjoy it. Commercial building, we do have, I'm not sure how many contracts we've gotten. I guess I didn't check with Sam to see where we're at. And Marge, I guess, is collecting most of those. They're coming to her office. We will refund any of those monies if we don't have the traditional fair, and they'll go back to the people that we did get signed up. We haven't done a lot with sponsors. I've talked to a few of my sponsors, and money is tight. And I'm not sure we're going to have enough sponsors to pay for our normal expenses. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now. My main concern is to have something for the youth, the kids that have been putting their heart and soul into getting these projects ready. And if that's all we have, you know, that to me is a win. I'd love to see everything. I'd love to wait until July 1st to make this decision. I guess I would entertain questions at this point.
I know, Deb, that from the county's perspective, I know one of their big concerns is the fact of, in case anybody would come down with the corona, the tracing, the cost of following that whole thing would fall onto the county. And I know with the lack of taxes that are being paid because people aren't out spending money, so the county's going to be hurt as far as revenue coming in. And so I know that that's a big concern from the county's perspective as far as this following up in case anybody does come down with it. So yeah, I too hope that we can get something arranged for the kids because I mean, we all know what it means to the kids. But as far as canceling the commercial side of things, or that, I don't know what term you want to use, but I'm using commercial. That would, I think people understand what I mean. I think that would be a wise thing, but that's just my 2 cents. So if anybody else has any ideas or thoughts or concerns, please speak up at this time.
My thought would be, you know, like you talk about like the tracking for like with the county and the expenses and stuff like that. And again, this is more on like the youth kids, because we're not forcing people to come to this fair, but say if they did come to the fair, that they would sign a waiver. You know, there's got to be some kind of waiver form filled out, that way you would be able to track, hey, everybody's there, but that the county would not be, you know, responsible for it.
Okay, that'd be a good question for legal counsel, whether that's even an option. I will check into that. So that is a discussion point. Okay.
Even if they signed a waiver, wouldn't you still have to track somebody's contacts if they were to pick it up and then they had been at the fair and didn't know it, like, you know, at a show or something? Wouldn't the county still have to track who they came in contact with?
We'd still have the people that were there that day and their, you know, the dates and their names of the people that were there that day. So heck, if I got to sit on the phone and call how many people, I can do that on between, you know, on my in between dairies during the day.
Okay. I still think it would be a thing for legal because yeah, we would have to, and I don't know who actually can do the tracking. I mean, do you have to be trained in tracking? I don't know the aspects of that as far as who can
I think the county health department, when they do it, they do have a lot of concerns about privacy and patient privacy. So you'd have to follow all those rules. I don't think Troy or Derek or myself would be allowed to make those calls. Sorry, Troy. I mean, that's an awesome offer, but I suspect there's a lot of HIPAA rules and things that would protect the individual's privacy. That's why the health department has to do it.
When we talk to the legal people on how to write up the waiver.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Nick could write a waiver, but we have to remember that we've had waivers before and we have been sued before. So it's, you know, waivers are as good as the piece of paper, and that's kind of the recommendation from the state, that you can, not from me, but from DADCAP and the Department of Ag, that waivers are only as good as the paper they're written on. People can still choose to sue even if they did that, because they can always say, well, it wasn't explained to me and I didn't understand. But that's a, you know, a whole nother discussion for Nick to have. there's, goodness, I lost my train of
Can I
thought.
chime in 1 second?
You
We're
sure
not,
can, Derek.
thank you. We're not actually forcing these people to come. It's something that they want to do. That's what I'm trying to understand about it. I mean, to me, is that a legal thing? That's the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can, Don.
Yeah, I think sometimes you create a hazard, and then of course you can be sued because you're creating a kind of like a swimming pool. You know, you attract people if you don't put a fence around it. But I just want to comment on a couple of things. I think for sure you should not have anything in front of the grandstand because that'd be impossible to police. And I even wonder if you want a carnival. If it's going to be just for the 4-H, let's keep it less attractive, you might say, for crowds. That's the way I'd look at it.
Okay, thanks, Don. Is KT on the call? I thought she was invited as a participant. I would like to hear what the health department would have to say about, if they have anything to say. Or Paul. I mean, I'm reading the COVID updates that we get daily from Paul, but I don't know if KT's on the call.
She is not on the call.
I don't see her name. Okay, I don't see her name, but I didn't know, you know, if she had sent a message for somebody or anybody. So, okay.
I guess I do have a
Then I guess we
question.
know.
I do have a question, and the question that I have is, as I was thinking this through my head, if we had something for the kids to have their animals or work judged, would that be open to the general public or would it be closed to the general public?
We could do it either way. I guess if we're still under the mandate that we have to, 50 people or less, or whatever that mandate is at the time, I would say it would be closed to the public, to the general public, because I don't know how we could, we'd be hard pressed to make sure that nobody was just not following those rules, I guess.
Right, and I
So-
think if it was closed to the general public and just open for the kids and the judging, I think that might be a little bit easier for contact tracing also.
Yes.
Mike Rogers has a question.
Okay, Mike.
Well, I'm a little late on this, but it is about the kids, and I would really like to see the kids have that opportunity. If we're not under the 50-person limitation, do we really have all of the legal restrictions? Because we're not under that. If the governor hasn't extended it any further and we've got past that, and we're not required to follow the 50-person, do we need to worry about the legal issue is my question.
Probably not. If it's all open back up and we can do whatever we want, people can go and wherever they want to go. And that's why I was hoping to get some feedback from KT to see, because we haven't had a jump in cases in since the weekend, or over the weekend. So just to see if she could shed any light on that, and maybe we can find out that later. But we could possibly do that, but I'm really putting numbers together, and I've been working on the numbers, and it's really tough right now. If I can't fill that grandstand, if people are still scared, people are still nervous, I need that grandstand packed to pay for those events. Obviously I don't want to, come out at the end and we're like, 70, 80,000 in the hole because we went ahead and had those events. Even if it's hiring the entertainment for the free stage, if we don't have a traditional fair, we're not going to have our parking revenue. I don't know the status of the beer gardens right now. Parts of the state, the beer distributors have laid off all summer help, and there's one county that their distributors said that they can pick up the beer at their location, but they will not be helping with the fair. So they're in a pickle right now trying to figure out if they can even handle it, trying to do it on their own without the help of the distributors. So there's a lot of moving pieces that I can't answer right now because we don't know where we're going. We don't know where the governor is going and how that lawsuit is going to come out. So that's why I was saying I was hoping that we didn't have to make this decision until July 1st. In addition, I'll just gotta add a piece of interesting information that one of the fairs, I think it was a Florida fair, the Clay County Fair in Florida, that created a virtual fair and has it on their website. And it's really cool. You could Google it and find it, but it is taking each division of the fair and creating a fair, like this is what happens at the fair, and doing the educational pieces, like, for example, a dairy cow. Did you know a dairy cow has 4 stomachs? Did you know where they're all located and what the purposes are? And it'll show that type of information. And actually, Sam took that on as a project right now to kind of put that together. If we don't have a traditional fair, we can share that with people and put that out there. So there is still education for anybody to come and see. And this would be all pictures from last year. And even if we have a fair in some way, we can still put that out there because it'll include the carnival. It'll include all the aspects of the fair. So she is working on that, and I appreciate that. She's our fair coordinator, and she's got a ton of ideas and working on that piece.
Dave Bartlett,
I guess I'd like
question?
to. Okay.
Getting back to what Mike Rogers talked about when he said if the governor opens it up, it isn't whether we could be faced with a lawsuit because somebody gets sick. It's the tracing that we're worried about that we'd be able to do, and the cost of that, having large crowds at the fair. So I think that's the major concern that Chuck had mentioned earlier is the tracking and the tracing if we did have somebody get sick at the fair. So I guess my 2 cents is I think we should probably make a decision sooner than later about canceling the grandstand and maybe the rides and focusing this year on a fair just for the kids.
I think, you know, a little bit, you know, sitting back and listening to everything, like the virtual thing, you know, for our overall community, you know, because obviously grandma and grandpas and stuff like that are not going to be able to be there to see their kids show or see their projects, you know, in person at the fair. But I think a combination of kids being able to bring it in and, you know, having it on, you know, as a virtual show or just even updates of, you know, hey, this is how people placed. I think that'd be really cool if we could do a combination of the two.
Great, thank you. Does any of my other fellow Fair Board members have any comments? Mike, did you have a question?
What kind of a cost are we looking at for doing some of that virtual, like say the animal judging to do that virtual versus in person? What kind of an expense are we looking at?
Right now, our software company that we contract with to run our fair they have a virtual program that is tied to theirs, and it's usually at a cost. This year they've waived that cost. So if we choose to run all of our fair through virtual judging, where a judge would look at it like we're looking, like I'd be judging your clothing that you have on right there, you'd be modeling it. The judge could do that piece, and that there would be no additional cost this year because they waived that right. They waived that fee to have that virtual judging. I think we can still handle the amount of people and have judging traditional judging, or not traditional, because we wouldn't have a big show ring, and it'd be more of a in and out type thing, and still have the kids bring their exhibits in. I think we can manage that with this amount of space that we have and spread people out and only allow the judge to have contact one-on-one with those projects that need that contact. Like photography, that's not judged that way. They're judged as a whole section of photography, and the kids don't have to be there. Those we could keep separate and not have any interaction other than the judge and the volunteer superintendents. That's the other thing that we need to reach out to all of our superintendents to find out, are they even willing to come? Because there's some elderly citizens that volunteer as superintendents. So, it is another option to do virtual. I think the kids would get more out of having it like what we're proposing, with a more of a jackpot type thing where they come in for one day and go out. So we are fortunate that our markets will take the animals. There's so far in the state of Wisconsin, there is one market sale that's canceled completely because they have absolutely nowhere to go with their animals, their meat animals. The fair is still planning on some type of event, but they've canceled the meat animal sales, and they did that now instead of later, just because they wanted to give those kids time to market their animals and see if they could find a buyer. I will tell you that there is 2 fairs that are completely canceled in the state, and I can give you those names. Oneida and Kewaunee County have canceled completely, will not be having a fair this year, and there's 2 more in the works that I can't divulge yet because they haven't notified everybody of what's going on.
Louisa has a question.
Thanks.
Okay.
So I wanted to reflect back as the 4-H educator here that I would say 90% of the calls and emails that I'm getting right now do concern the fair. And I think I want to reflect back that this is a great concern to our general leaders right now. That's the people that I've been talking to. I did do a survey and I haven't gotten tons of answers back, but the answers I've gotten back, their number one concern was summed up very nicely as OMG, the fair, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So here's what I think. If we can find a way to do a hybrid fair where things that are normally not judged in person, we maybe submit digitally, just like, they don't usually see the judge, they get the comments later. And we could have Sam put those up on the website where, like Troy said, grandparents could see those. And then do the things that really do need to be in person, but do them in a controlled manner. I am pretty sure with good communication that we will get very good cooperation from our 4-H families in terms of whatever safety features we put into place, if that were to even be possible. That being said, I also want to just say that from the meetings that I've been sitting in with our Dean of Extension and with Jason Hausler from the fair perspective, it's pretty complicated if we are still under some controls as to whether 4-H is allowed to meet in groups larger than 10. Then there are issues of whether our volunteers can be there as 4-H volunteers, or they just have to be there as individual community members, in which case they're not covered by the normal liability insurance that we have through the University of Wisconsin. Children in 4-H in Dunn County are covered by activity insurance. If they are choosing to participate in the fair as individuals, which they have every right to do, so they enter the fair because they are in a youth group, 4-H, Boy Scouts, Boys and Girls Club, but once they're there, they would not be participating essentially because 4-H told them to. They would be participating individually as families. And that could also affect insurance on that end. So it gets very complicated. And I mean, people, like you said, the legal and health departments, I think people are digging into this as more fairs are trying to figure out how to go forward. But I just want to say on behalf of my families, they very much would like to have some kind of fair and not just have it canceled outright. So if we can do a hybrid fair where some things are in person, but animals and families come in small numbers off the trailer to the judge, back out the door, not lots of people watching. Maybe we can even be filming and uploading some of that. I think that has the potential to be safer for our whole community. We've kept our numbers low because people have been very cooperative. But the fair is certainly a very important thing. And a lot of people are pretty down right now because they're doing school virtually. They're not getting to do all the activities that they normally do this time of year. So I think we have a mental health issue as well as a physical health issue. And I know that that is a very important balancing act for all of us adults who care very much about the youth and the families in this community. So I'll get off my soapbox here, but I just want you to know that if we do go with a hybrid, even if I can't be there, because that is also a possibility that I will not be allowed to physically be present, I'll do whatever I can to support the whole thing going forward in terms of communication. And I know that we will get good, responsible support from our families in terms of whatever restrictions are put on in terms of not too many people at once or that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
That is kind of what I was referring to, the virtual part, that where the judge, where the people watching, spectators could see it online, not necessarily the kids virtual.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for clarifying, because I was misunderstanding what you were talking. Because we do have the opportunity to do virtual judging where they upload their pictures of their projects to the software, and then they're judged from that point. So that is an option, which I'm not 100% real thrilled with, because I think it's doesn't showcase the kids enough, give them that opportunity. There's a lot of ways that we can, keep the judges safe, put them behind plexiglass, put them behind barriers, give them masks, give them gloves, tons of hand sanitizer, to make it work so that some of the kids can come and see their projects get, those that need to have that interaction.
Okay, is there any other Fair Board members have anything they want to add here to the discussion before we move on to the next one? I think we've covered everything that I thought we would be covering, but there might be something else or another angle that I haven't thought of. So does any of the other Fair Board members have any comments to make at this time?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, my only thought is if we still put on, the animal part of the show and the projects, just the exhibitors, we won't have any revenue per se. So, and I mean, there's still some expenses that would be entailed. So my only thought is who's gonna pay for that, or how is all that gonna come about?
Okay, I could probably answer some of that, and then please, I'm not sure if who else is on here. I guess I can look, but we do have a budget item for that, for premiums, paying premiums. However, we won't have the other income that helps offset that. So I guess I would ask the committee, I mean, if we cut down everything else, we won't have we won't have grandstand expenses. We won't have free stage expenses. We won't have the pipe and drape. We won't have advertising. There's a lot of other things that won't happen. And if that money we get reimbursed, probably 40%, 30% from the state. I never know for sure, because it all depends on how many fairs there are, how many dollars of premium were spent all over the state. We will get some of that back. Keep in mind too that there is a pot in the state government that's set aside for premiums, and that's not going to be touched with this 5% cut that Governor Evers is talking about, and that stays the same amount. That's one place that doesn't get cut because it's considered more of a grant type thing. For those fairs that cancel, they will not get any state aid, so there'll be more of a pot for the rest of them that do have fairs, and we'll collect some premiums. I can't tell you the dollar amount because it's a massive formula. The max that a fair can get is 10,000. I do know that. We typically get between 5,500 and 6,000. Last year it was about 57.5 that we received, or this year for last year's fair. Chuck, if you have any comments on that, budget-wise?
No, I don't. That is a good question though, but like you say, the fact that you won't be having any other expenses would weigh in, as far as having funds available. But that is a good question. That is a good question.
Because you'd probably still have your electricity, you'd still have some electricity bills, and you'd still have some of that kind of costs that are, fixed with having a fair and the county facility workers that are there. And you'd probably still have to have security the day or couple days you had. I mean, and you wouldn't be able to have all the species the same day, so you'd still be talking. It would be over a few days, I would think. So that's just where I was wondering how that would all look. But
Mm-hmm.
We
I
do
think
have.
it'll be,
Sorry, Deb.
okay, Martha?
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
we do have the luxury if we continue to have the fair for that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Each one of those days could be set aside for, like, for instance, Wednesday could be dairy cattle, Thursday could be pigs, Friday could be beef. You could split it up, so you definitely would even keep your, the amount of people coming in even lower, because you can spread out into that other building, the brick building across the street.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of space we can utilize, and we can cut the amount of projects that are coming in quite drastically. That's an option too.
Yeah, right. And I think they've also changed it a little bit too, that like right now the dog project is not meeting because they just physically, they can't get together
Right.
and practice because of the numbers. So, they've changed it also that it was typically 30 days after the fair ends that all the reports come in. But if we end up having the dog show, for example, in October, if things are back to normal and everything is working okay, we can hold off on having everything in that 5-day period. We have the use of those 2 buildings for 4 weeks, but we can always use the buildings across the street for the dogs or anything else and stretch this out, because it's whenever you decide your last event is, that's when the 30-day clock starts, which that was also a change that kind of is helping fairs structure their days and spread things out a little bit. So good point, Martha. Thank you. To be a fiscally responsible citizen and leader, I really have concerns with the grandstand. I don't think that would be fiscally the right thing to do, to have those events, because I just am really concerned and worried that we will not get the number of people in to pay for those expenses. Besides, the safety thing, even if everything is lifted, I think people are going to be really concerned. It's going to be one way or the other. They're going to be either excited to get out and they don't care, or they're going to be still worried and scared and they won't come. Or they've been laid off for a long time and they don't have the money now to come and spend on the tickets and the travel to get here. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, but.
Well, I would agree with you 100% on everything that you said there, because just based on people that I've talked to, of course, here I'm on the older generation here again too, but they're not, myself included, or we're not going anyplace. We're just going to lay low for a while and just see what happens. So I think you're spot on with that analysis. So
and I think we kind of need to take some responsibility for keeping people safe. I work in the school district and we're taking this really seriously. No one's allowed in the building unless you have to be there. So they don't need to be there, and maybe we tell them they don't need to be there by not having it. We need to take responsibility that we're in charge of this and say, not this year for some pieces of it. The 4-H piece,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. The grandstand, not so much.
No. Yeah.
I do have one thing, and I kind of want to take off of what Michael was talking about too, and that instead of doing a virtual fair, what about being able to, if this does go on, what about being able to live stream the judging? Because they said, you know, the grandparents and people, they want to be able to see their grandkids or kids or whoever present their animal. If you thought of it more as a live streaming, maybe with Facebook Live or something like that, they could actually, at the time their kids are going through, they could actually see it.
Yes, and I've got that on my list that I've already reached out to see if we could borrow some, you know, I mean, you can use your cell phone, but can we borrow some and get a hold of some cameras that we can really do a good job and really showcase the kids and live stream? But yep, that's on my list.
We do have some nice equipment and extension because we do work so much remotely with our ag agent, for instance, filming classes and that type of thing. So as usual, extension will be your partner in that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. So just for clarification, Chuck, this, I'm assuming that you are looking for what, a decision on what the fair is going to look like so that you can take it to county board at the meeting in May. Is that what you're looking for and why we are having this, or go, or what are the next steps, I guess I should.
Oh, okay. The next steps would, excuse me, would be that we would make a recommendation to the exec committee, and then the exec committee would take it to the full county board here now. As far as, so that would be the process. And yes, that is why we called the meeting, was because time is limited, and next thing you know, it's going to be there. And so that's why I called a special meeting. Yes. So that's why one of the next action item will be is the consideration of reports, resolutions, et cetera, to be made by the facilities committee. So when the open conversation gets done here, then I will ask the facilities committee what their thoughts are.
Okay.
So if anybody has anything more, please speak now, or if not, then I will move on to the next item, which is the consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinances to be recommended by the facilities committee. So one more time, does anybody else have any input as far as their thoughts on the fair? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item then. I'm speaking now to the facilities committee. You've listened to the input from the people that have been here on the call here tonight. So what is your thoughts as far as moving forward? Does anybody have any thoughts? Hello.
Yeah, I do.
No one wants to be the bad one.
I do. I can speak if you want me to.
Yes, I would actually like everyone on the facilities committee to speak if they choose to. Yeah, you know, they don't have to, but I would like to hear what they're thinking.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
No? Okay, I guess my suggestion would be, first of all, right now, cancel anything in front of the grandstand because of the health risk and the financial risk. And I kind of leaning towards canceling the carnival also, because that to me is another attraction that would jeopardize people's health. And then I thought there was a lot of good ideas on having some sort of modified 4-H fair. So that's my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck, this is Tim.
Mhm.
Just thought I'd let you know, I agree with what Don said. I agree with what Deborah was saying. I think at this point in time, there's just too much risk in the grandstand area. As far as the midway area, I don't know how much we can take a wait and see attitude on that. I just don't know. But I do agree with everything everybody has said about making sure that the kids have a fair experience this year. So, but I think there's lots of things that we can look at there. As I mentioned before, live streaming. I think that would be a great option for everybody if we went down that route. So, and I think with all the equipment that they have now, that they've been doing virtual classes with, I think that during the summer, we could actually borrow or move some of that equipment to the fairgrounds to be able to do that and make that happen. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Mike, what do you
I
think?
would agree. I agree a lot with how Tim said. It's about the kids. I'd like to see the kids still be able to present their projects. They put a lot of work over the last year into it. It'd be sad to see that part go away. However you view it, the attendance is going to be down. So I do agree that we run the risk of really going into hole if we start spending a lot of money and not getting the return. No matter how you feel about it, we're going to have a lower turnout, and that run. I'm not sure that there's a lot of value in keeping some of the grandstand items either, and the carnival is questionable to me. So I guess it's just about the kids and keeping the fair from that perspective, and for me.
Okay, thank you. Ron, what do you think?
Well, I say we should have no food, no grandstand, and we have a big space where we can space people out and try to program where people can be at, if they can be at certain places, and try to, organize to make sure that everybody is, being spacing and doing what we're supposed to do. And I do agree with all of you about everything you said.
Okay, thank you. And I agree with everything that was said tonight. It's for the kids, and however we can make this a hybrid thing, I think that's the way to go. So I guess what I need now is a formal motion to move forward to the exec committee as far as how would you want it worded, or how do you want it? I mean, it's however, I mean, basically what you're saying is to focus on the 4-H for the kids only, and no commercial activities as far as the grandstand, the carnival, or any general activities. So is there somebody that would care to word it differently, or make a motion that that's what we move forward to the exec committee? Okay, then I'll make a motion that we at this time move forward to the exec committee, that the Dunn County Fair would no longer, for this year, would cancel the grandstand, the carnival, and any commercial activities that would be normally crowd, that would produce crowds, and focus on the 4-H aspect of the fair.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question on the commercial aspect of it.
Yes.
Is that something that we have to cancel at this time? Is there an additional, are we running the risk of losing money on that aspect of it if we cancel it later, if we go forward with that portion of it versus some of the other aspects?
Okay, so are you talking about having businesses with open booths? What would we
I guess
carry on?
that was I don't know I guess I'm just not certain what the commercial portion of it that you're talking about in the motion is. Is that the booths, or I'm not sure what that part is.
Yes, my intention was the booths, because that's what the commercial building and stuff. The fact that here again, how if you are going to have that booth open or that building open for commercial exhibits, then you're going to have to, monitor, and you're going to, I mean, that whole aspect is as far as that. So in answer to your question, yes, that would be shutting down the traditional commercial exhibits also.
And that would give extra space for the 4-H displays.
If needed, yeah, right. However, it would work out, that might, yes.
Thank you.
I had one question, Chuck.
Yeah.
Would that cut out the 4-H food stand too, that motion?
I wasn't thinking of that aspect in it. I know that was brought up earlier in the discussion as far as food. The 4-H food stand, but
Okay, can I maybe
please
help
do.
you with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 4-H food stand is in the commercial building or in the ice arena, and they use the concession stand, which is all glassed off. So people would be kept away. It's very limited space in there. So it's not like they can have a ton of workers in there. I'm thinking that this is a huge fundraiser for the 4-H clubs. For revenue. They could serve a limited menu, but it would be nice to offer something for the kids that might be there during the day. And with the space that they're in, I think we could make it work. However, I would ask that Louisa chime in to see how that fits with what the 4-H insurance coverage and how that all falls. Is that considered a 4-H activity?
Well, that's the problem, is that we don't know, excuse me, we don't know how many people can be together at what time, because right now we're predicting into late July and we're only in early May. So if we were under the limit we're under now, no, we couldn't do it as a 4-H thing. If we were 10 people can gather at once as an official 4-H thing, we could probably find a way to make that work. Like you said, it's glassed and it'd be a small group, and we tend to work one club at a time. So maybe we could make that work. Obviously the take from that is going to be much smaller. A limited menu is probably a smart idea, but there won't be all the people who are normally there for the carnival and the grandstand and the commercial exhibit. The people passing through to have lunch. It would just be basically serving lunch to the 4-H people, the judges and the superintendents. I can't tell you about the liability and insurance question because I have not had that answer to my satisfaction yet. The tricky part is people can come and do the fair. There's no rule, like we can't tell them that you can't go as 4-Hers, but if we say it's not a 4-H event, then that changes things, right? So I am not really clear on the food booth. It has come up in several meetings, and I don't know that we've gotten a great answer on that. I think we're all taking more of a wait and see attitude in terms of, what will our, what will the curve look like? What kind of restrictions will we or will we not have in July? And I guess at this point, the safest answer is to say, I do not know. But I mean, I think at this point, it would be nice if we didn't necessarily cancel it in a resolution, if we kept that open to see what the conditions can bear later in the summer.
If your motion is not including food, then that can be addressed at a later time, correct?
Yes.
But we have a lot of other food stands, like, the double-decker bus, all of those other food stands. So I think we need, if your intention is to eliminate all of those people coming, like Domino's Pizza and all of those other ones, Justin could speak to the names of them all. But like, the barbecue food truck, what are your thoughts on that? I guess we just need to make it clear because we've got those contracts all in place now with those people and have collected their down payment. So we would need to refund that money if this all goes through. So we need to know how to proceed with that. So maybe it could exclude 4-H food stand or something, if that's what your thoughts are.
Right,
I'm
and
just trying to clarify.
the 4-H food stand could be considered a nonprofit. It is a fundraiser for
Yes.
all of the 4-H clubs are themselves chartered nonprofit entities under the Board of Regents. They all have their own paperwork for that. So the money being raised is considered a nonprofit fundraiser. So if you wanted to, in your resolution, clarify or carve out that you are not going to hold the for-profit or commercial food booths, but you are open to potentially having the nonprofit 4-H one. Maybe that's one way that you could clarify it for the public or for the full board.
Yeah, I think what we could do is carve out the 4-H food stand because this basically is a 4-H fair. Because I think there's a couple other nonprofits, aren't there a couple of churches? Not yet, okay.
Yes.
So then.
Yes, there is. There's the Farm Bureau is
Yeah.
there. That's a huge one for them. And
But
so we'd have to be careful not to use nonprofit.
I would suggest we just carve out an exception for the 4-H stand because it's a 4-H fair. That could be a good justification, I would think.
Also, you might be careful of wording it as only 4-H because, Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the way the Dunn County Fair is, it has a youth part, and any youth can participate in Dunn County if they belong to a youth organization. I would hate to see Boys and Girls, FFA, Boy Scouts, for instance, kicked out of this because of the wording of this language. If we say only 4-H, then we're not allowing all of our sister and brother organizations in, and that seems pretty unfair to the kids who are working on their projects right now as well.
Yeah, and I don't think that was the intent. I think it was talking about 4-H more in the food stand thing.
Yeah.
But it would be a youth fair.
Okay, then we could say any nonprofit, would that be?
No, we still can't use the word nonprofit
Oh,
because we have Farm Bureau.
Okay, yeah. Okay, a youth
But
fair.
is this motion even addressing that? I mean, we're addressing the grandstands and the major expenses. Is that something we need to address? I mean, if you want to work out where they food people come in and they only have one customer a day, that's their problem. I guess, is it even an issue that we need to deal with?
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is the fact that if we are going to make it known that we're not having the big events, how many food people distributors are even going to want to come because they know the crowds aren't going to be there.
Right.
So that's what I was thinking. That was my thought process. But I'm open, open to ideas.
Can you repeat the motion?
Basically, it would be the cancellation of all commercial activities, being the grandstand, the carnival, and the commercial building at this time.
So I'm unclear. Does that include the food trucks that they mentioned? Because I totally agree that with the crowds being a lot less, that they probably wouldn't want to be there anyway. But I think you should specify that somehow in your motion, so that the fair board knows whether to, break those contracts with them or not.
Okay, my intent was not to exclude the food trucks. It was just the grandstand, the carnival, and the commercial building. Because if the food trucks were there, and here again, like everybody is saying, nobody knows what we're going to have in July. But if we're still under an order where X amount of people, why then it would be like it is right now. The food trucks themselves would have to monitor the spacing between the people and all that stuff. But I guess originally I did not have the thinking of the food trucks would be in there, but I mean, I'm open to it if you, but I don't want to stop the 4-H food stand from going on either. So it's a very fine line there.
I just want to
think we should
understand
just
what
leave
you
it.
meant.
Yeah.
I think that they shouldn't have any food things there because, you know, then people be sitting around together eating. And then you have to space all your tables and I just think it would just be a bad idea.
Okay. Well,
And then you will have the beer garden too, that would probably be eliminated too, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Isn't the beer garden part of the grandstand area?
Well, there's two.
Okay.
There's two beer gardens. There's one by the free stage also.
Right.
So
I do
according to the
think-
motion right now. Oh, go ahead.
I do think we got to remember that we are not forcing people to come here and we are not forcing people to sit next to each other. You know, that if you don't want to be there, you don't have to be there. It's their choice, whether they sit next to me or they sit next to you or Deb, or, you know, even come to the fair alone. So I think we need to keep that aspect of it, you know, also.
Yeah.
So the current motion does not include food at this time, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? If not, there's been a motion made and seconded to have that will cancel the grandstand, the carnival, and the commercial building at this time. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, we will draft that up and have that presented at the executive committee then. Okay, that concludes our special meeting for this evening. I thank everybody who attended, and I appreciate your input. There's no doubt that everybody's very concerned about the kids in the 4-H, and we all want to make it happen. So again, thank you for your time. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey,